Hey everyone, welcome back to Gates Tech. I'm Jer, and today we're going to talk about Spider-Man. You know, the game's been out for a couple weeks already. A lot of people have gone through it already, myself included. I finished the main storyline already. Still have to go back and finish up some of the side missions that I missed, but I'm making my way through it. And I thought I'd give my thoughts about some of the things that I liked, some things I didn't like. You know, some of the things that the game makers did really, really well. Some things that we kind of missed out on that we're hoping for. So let's just dive right into it. You know, the intro. Let's start with the intro. The intro was super cool, super fun, super exciting from the moment you start the game. One of the things I found really, really appealing about the first game is that you kind of already know the story. You already know Spider-Man. You know who he is. He's like the most famous superhero on the world. So you know who he is. You know his story, and the game makers made you just dive right in. You know, you get and this is the first game I'm talking about. You get like a little bit of background. You see that Peter's a little poor. You know, I remember seeing his eviction notice being slid under the door, and then as soon as he jumps out that window, you get this awesome music, and you feel really excited. It's thrilling, and you know you're headed toward an adventure, right? It's almost like that summer vacation feeling that we feel like as kids. And this game does a really, really good job of emulating that, you know, of repeating that. So, spoilers ahead, obviously, if you haven't seen or played the game. But here, the intro is you set the background, you set the stage for Miles, right? You see where he's at now, where he's at Vision Academies, he has friends, and we start to wonder where Peter is. Peter is actually the teacher, you find out really early into the game. And the part that's comparable to the Wilson Fisk takedown in the beginning, that's that long intro, really exciting, really thrilling, really like just straight into the action, is with Sandman. Miles actually sees sand coming out of his window. He goes to the roof. He sees what's going on. He brings Peter, and then they dive right into swinging across the city from Brooklyn Vision Academies all the way down to where Sandman is wrecking the city. You know, he is stories tall, right? Reminded me a lot of the Flint Marko from Spider-Man 3, the Tobey Maguire version, where he's super, super tall in that construction zone. So that's kind of what it seems like. That's what it feels like. You know, you have giant, giant Sandman throwing cars and buses and just wrecking buildings. And you, as Spider-Man, have to swing along with Miles all the way over there and fight him. You fight your way through buildings, fighting his little minions, right? And eventually you take down Sandman. But it already feels like a huge boss level event right in the beginning of the game. And what's super cool that I noticed while starting some of the fight scenes or the gameplay is that you already know what his moves are. You already know how to play as Spider-Man because you played the first game. Chances are you've played the first game. If you haven't, I highly recommend you do. It's really, really good. But you already know how to fight. You know, there's not much of a learning curve there. There's some new additions. Don't get me wrong. You find that out in the intro, right? And they do a really good job of weaving in directions with gameplay so that you know it doesn't feel like learning, but you are learning how to play. And what you're learning is how to use these the Iron Spider legs that pop out from your back, and where basically Peter Parker, Spider-Man, jumps at an enemy and swipes at them with their Iron Spider legs. And it's one of the first moves that you learn, and most of the learning will be through these special attacks, right? First with the Iron Spider legs, and later on with the Venom symbiote having his tendrils attack other people. And that's really, really cool that we already know how to play this game. We can just dive right into it and already feel like a superhero. And of course, feeling like a superhero is kind of the point, right? It's an immersive game. And what helps with the immersivity, which is pretty sure not a word, but what helps you feel more like you're in the game is the swinging, right? That's what it did for us when we played the 2018 version of the game of Spider-Man 1. So awesome, so lifelike, so immersive. You could be swinging through the city. You're starting to look for these swinging points, right? Where it'd be like a crane overhead or a helicopter or the edges of a building. You already know where you would put a web line as if you're actually the superhero. And the game also tends to, 90% of the time, I would say, the game agrees with you and shoots a line to that corner of the building or that crane or that helicopter. And it really helps you feel like you are this superhero. Moving on, right? You take down Sandman. You and Miles team up, take down Sandman, and you putting him away. And before he goes off to the raft, he gives you a warning that somebody's coming for you guys. Then that's when you get our first cutscene where we see Raven, this immense, huge, big, bulky, muscular man who just, like, I think he breaks the guy's neck with one hand. Reminded me a lot like of Thanos treating Loki. Right? That's the kind of weight that he carries. And at the end of that cutscene, he sets his sights on New York City. So you already know what's coming. The next part of the game, which is kind of obvious, is what kind of feels slow to me. You know, it's not as thrilling as the intro. I mean, with an intro like that, of course it can't be, you know, all high all the time. And then the game has to set up the new mechanics, or the story has to set up the new mechanics of the game for you, right? Then what's slow, I think, is the drone system you have to launch. You have to go visit like rooftops to find these hidden crates where you launch a drone that helps us set up the Spider-Man app for people to report if they need help, which is super useful, I'm sure. But it wasn't the most fun part of the game. And there's other things like that, you know, throughout this game. A lot of the incidents, right? The red triangle shows with the exclamation point when somebody needs help. They're like that. Yeah, they're repetitive. And they can be a little boring sometimes. One of the things I thought was cool was the way that they used Miles' new power, or not new power, but his Venom power, which you find out later that he gets an upgrade, which is why I said new power. But the way they use it in the intro is, you know, if you superheat sand, you get glass, and with his Venom power, you know, he can punch Sandman's avatar or whatever little sand sculpture and turn it to glass. I thought was really cool. You know, I thought they would get some more of that as throughout the game. We don't really. You know, that even though Miles gets a really good character arc, you're still the main character in this game is still Peter. I understand, you know, it's a Spider-Man video game, and I guess people still think Spider-Man, Peter Parker, but I would have liked to have seen a little bigger role from Miles, you know, story-wise and development-wise. But his arc in this game is still great, and I can't wait to play Miles Morales 2 if they're making that. I'm sure they are. You know, these games are super successful, so I'm sure they are giving him his own solo game again. And yeah, that's enough of the intro. Oh, before we move on from the intro, one of my favorite parts of the first beginning, I guess, of the game is when you have this Genki gives you a call telling you there's an executive being trapped under a pile of sand and you gotta go save him. He's in a limo. So you go and save him, and of course, of all the people in the city it turns out being J. Jonah Jameson. And you have to swing him to the nearest hospital, which I thought was super funny because he's like yelling at you, it's calling you a menace, telling you to put him down while on the way to the hospital. Like, I'm trying to save your life, dude. Will you just shut up for like 5 minutes? Go back to hating me afterwards? Anyway, I thought that was very funny. And of course, before we move on, we got to talk about the newest way of traversing the map. Right? We have the web wings, and I know that a lot of people, when they first saw the web wings in the trailer, they said, "No way am I going to use that!" Right? Like, one of the best things about being Spider-Man is swinging around, which they are absolutely right. It's super fun swinging around, but I hope that once they played the game, they changed their mind, because immediately, as soon as I got access to the web wings, I wanted to use them immediately, and they're not a replacement for swinging. Swinging is still super super fun, but as you found in the first game, there are some areas where there aren't as tall buildings, so you can't always swing super high. And it's for these areas, I like to use the web wings, and I'm sure everyone else did too, right? They one of the funnest things about swinging through the game was building up speed. You know, diving, free falling after diving off a high building, leading into a swing, right? Building up that momentum. And the web wings are really great way to keep that momentum in case you're swinging through a patch of city that doesn't have tall buildings. So they're really fun. The updrafts above on rooftops really help too for specifically those things. Yeah, and I love them. I love using them, and I can't wait to just swing around some more. So of course, if you played the first game, you saw the post-credit scene. Most likely, I hope you did. It was Harry in a tank, full of green, right, with him being engulfed by Venom. You know, we figured back then that he was healing. Venom was healing Harry, and yeah, that is definitely what happened, right? That's how this game starts. You get context to that post-credit scene. Norman gives Harry the symbiote and puts him in a tank, right? Then soon after the beginning of the game, Harry comes back into your life, and you guys go on a bike ride together. A lot of people say this was really slow, right? It's kind of boring, and yeah, it's slow, right? You're not swinging around, you're not fighting anyone, you're just biking from Aunt May's house to their former high school. And yeah, it can be boring, but I think it's part of the story. And one of the things that Insomniac does is they put the story first, which I think a lot of people will really appreciate. Like, the gameplay is fun, right? But it's not terribly difficult, right? They don't make it impossible for you to get through, right? They make it, I think, fairly easy compared to other games to get through. When I played this game, my first setting I chose was the hardest difficulty, because I like a little bit of challenge in the fighting. But I really enjoy the fact that they put the story first, because the story writing is so great, and them riding their bikes together and being kids again is important to the story. So I didn't mind it at all. You know, I got through it, and I actually kind of enjoyed it myself. You know, I'm an adult now, and I haven't been on a bike in a while. I actually kind of missed it after playing this. It seemed to really romanticize the idea of riding a bike, and I enjoyed it. I just didn't. I'm just saying I didn't hate it as much as a lot of people did. And what's really cool about this game is the flashbacks. You know, like you get to play as young Peter. They made him look really dorky with the glasses and the real tucked in shirt, I think. And you get to see him with Harry in their time in high school. Specifically, they realized that they left their project on a flash drive that they needed to get out of the school, but the school was closed for the weekend, so they had to break in. And you're avoiding the night staff trying to break into your locker and get the flash drive. And comes right after the bike scene where you're riding through the city to the school. And it's really lighthearted, right? The bike scene was lighthearted, and this was kind of mischievous but young and fun. And you guys are kind of worried about getting in trouble, but you're having fun, right? And it's still more or less lighthearted. And where they really get you is you escape the school, and then you see a helicopter come in and land in the football field. And then it gets really serious when you see it's Norman Osborn flying in a helicopter, and Harry and Peter walk towards him, but Norman asks Peter to hang back. And you just see Harry break down to his knees. I'm fortunate enough to not have lost any parent, but I can only imagine what that feels like. And it really felt like I could feel Harry's pain as he just like crumbles to the floor when Norman is talking to him about what just happened to his mom. It was a really good performance by the actors, really good writing. It really made me feel what that might feel like. It's impressive. I thought it was impressive anyway. Next, what we have is one of the really exciting parts of the game. And this is where Kraven is making his approach to New York. And what you find out he's doing is he's actually hunting villains. So one of his first targets, I think, is Scorpion and Lee, who killed Miles' dad in the bombing on Mayor Osborn's campaign rally back in the first game. So as he's on his way to the raft to intercept the transport, both Spider-Mans go over to the raft and oversee this transport. Peter and Miles make it to the raft, and when they see who's being transported, which is Scorpion, and then followed by Lee, you see a little bit of a darker side of Miles. You know, he's still grieving from the loss of his dad, and you see his fist clench up, and you get a little bit of that Venom punch. He's angry, he's pissed, and he starts getting closer to Lee, but Peter calms him down, luckily. So they oversee this transport, and of course, you know what's coming. Kraven and his goons, his squad, his men, whatever, attack the ship, which are transporting the two villains. And when the two Spider-Men are able to fight off the ground forces, then you get the helicopter thrown into the ship, and They harpoon the ship and they pierce the hull and it starts to sink. So now Spider-Man have to go into the ship and start saving people. But Miles hears somebody calling from the outside of a door saying, help me, right? I can't get out.
I'll get you out.
He breaks open the door, or the giant vault door, and he mistakenly let out Scorpion. And he gets stung by Scorpion's venom poison thing. And so he starts hallucinating and reliving the death of his father. And he's even angrier, right? Then he's trying to get out of the ship before he drowns. He ends up finding Lee. Martin Lee's trapped in his cell. There's only one window where you can see in, and he's strapped to a chair, and the water's filling up. The water's filling up the cell. All you see is the water rising as Martin Lee is like asking Spider-Man for help. Martin Lee, of course, doesn't know who Spider-Man is. He doesn't know what he did. He doesn't know why Spider-Man isn't helping him. But Miles was just going to let him die. And I kind of like that. Superheroes are always good, right? They're heroes. But they're much more relatable as humans when they have these temptations, right? And I don't know if I would do anything different than Miles did. You know, that what Martin did was horrible. But before Martin drowns, you know, he's saved in a way, or captured by Kraven and his team. And eventually he is actually captured and taken in Kraven's helicopter. And the reason that happens is because both Spider-Men are at this time trying to save the pier or boardwalk, which has been destroyed by the crashing ship. And Miles has this, he really has his sights set on revenge, because he webs up Martin Lee as he's being pulled by one of the helicopters. So now he's in this tug of war with one of Kraven's helicopters and Martin Lee in the middle. And Peter Parker Spider-Man, meanwhile, is trying to save all these people who are being who are sliding down this sinking boardwalk into the blades of the sinking ship. And there's too many people for him to save, so he needs Miles' help. So he asks Miles to help him, and Miles, I think, doesn't hear him or ignores him because he's just so focused on making sure Lee is captured. But he makes the right call and he lets him go. Really reluctantly, he lets him go and saves these people. So, good job, Miles, for being a hero, I guess. What we get after this is another bit of a slow down. You know, Miles catches up with Uncle Aaron, the Prowler, who calls him up and asks him to come visit, so he does. And he asks Miles for a favor to go around to his secret caches and pick up whatever technology he has left over, you know, from his Prowler days. So it doesn't get into the wrong hands. You know, good intentions on Uncle Aaron's part, but a bit slow, a bit boring. The puzzles aren't terribly hard and aren't super interesting either, so I avoided these, to be honest. Another thing I skipped is the photography. Yeah, especially with that teacher one mission thing. I don't feel like Miles' missions were all that exciting. You know, this was definitely a Peter Parker story mission-wise. I feel like he got all the good assignments, good missions, and coolest thing Miles did was help somebody with their promposal, I think. But next up, Harry's back. He starts a nonprofit, I think, that he and Peter dreamed of having, where this company that would help use science to improve the world. He named it after their fallen guardians. Emily Osborn was his mom, who passed away, and Aunt May is Aunt May, right? She passed away in the end of the last game, spoiler warning. And so the name of the foundation is the Emily May Foundation, which I thought was really sweet. And Harry's trying to convince Peter to work there with him. And of course, Peter wants to. This is his dream too. But he has this responsibility that always seems to get in the way. You know, we saw at the beginning of this game that Peter got a job as a teacher, right, for Miles' school. And within the same day, he was fired because he had to abandon his position as teacher to go and save New York, which I get it, right? It is the problem that Spider-Man faces all the time, in that his time is limited, right? He can't commit to anything because he always has this Spider-Man alter ego that requires so much attention, right? There's always going to be crime, and so he always has to spring into action when he can. So he can't really, you know, tie himself down to this job. And it's not that he doesn't want the job, he really does, and it's not that, you know, he's not willing to try to make a job work. It's more so that he doesn't want to try and fail at this job. It's his dream job with his best friend that he's he's had since he was a little kid, and this dream is they share together. He doesn't want to take on this job and not be able to commit, right? He doesn't want to let his friend down. He doesn't want to let himself down. He doesn't want to let his inner child down, right? You know, it's not just any job. There's a lot hanging on this job. So he goes into this tour already knowing that he's gonna say no, but after Harry basically begging and showing him around, he says yes, and he's excited about it, but he's also a little scared, right? As anyone would be. So next up, Peter tries to track down Craven, who took both villains. He ends up finding this base, I believe, in Chinatown. I could be wrong. It's in an abandoned building. He breaks in. You take out some goons along the way, and this is where you debut one of your new gadgets, which is a web line, which I thought was really, really cool. You can shoot a web line from any flat surface to another flat surface. You can make basically this tightrope, so you to walk along and redecorate the room basically with these hanging cocoons of goons, hanging cocoons. Once you get into this base and you take out all the goons and you find this unattended computer, that's when you really find out what Craven's plan is. When you see like basically a hit list of all Spider-Man's rogues gallery of villains, including his ex, Black Hat. And then we cut to Craven, where he's in his center of operations. And this is where we get an even bigger sense of how serious he is. He finds out Scorpion escaped his cage. You know, you can see Scorpion in the background hiding, ready to pounce on Craven. With his back turned, Scorpion pounces on Craven. Craven catches him by the throat and breaks off his tail and stabs him in the gut. It all happens so fast, and it hits you, right, with some shock. And it really shows you how serious he is. He just killed a pretty famous villain in the Spider-Man universe, right? And with that, you know how much is at risk, you know, with now that you have that list of villains that he's going after next. And now there's that sense of urgency. All right, next up we have Miles is sent on a mission by MJ to find Black Hat. All right, they know that she's on the list of people to off, right? So they go and try and find her. So he goes to her apartment, I believe. This is on a rooftop. And they see that it's been trashed. And you get this really cool, like, crime scene remodeling hologram thing where it shows you that Hunters had actually attacked Felicia, and she dove off the roof. And so you make your way over to the next rooftop blocks away, where again is trashed. You find out that she's going from safe to safe, I believe, looking for a relic. And now that word choice is intentional. Turns out her plan is to break into the Sanctum Sanctorum and steal this relic that allows her to portal to anywhere on Earth. Basically, it's a sling ring, but it's not. It's like a little baton. And I really, really love this, that they bring in Doctor Strange. When I was playing the first game and I saw the Sanctum Sanctorum, I got really excited. And I thought that was it. You know, what we got in the first game was just the Sanctum Sanctorum cameo, and I love that it was there, and that was it. It was really subtle, and it was a really cool Easter egg, and it was super exciting to find. Now in this game, I love that they've added to it. And what you see is the famous Doctor Strange sparks in a circle hovering over the seal. And you almost expect Doctor Strange to come out of there. But I love that he didn't. I really hope that one day Insomniac is able to make a Doctor Strange game. I love Doctor Strange. And the potential for a video game is here. We see it in this sequence. Black Cat steals, like I said, this sling ring type relic, and she's portaling all over the city trying to get to Paris, and we find that out later, but she doesn't know how to really use this relic yet, so she's portaling around the city just running away from Miles, and Miles is swinging and gliding through these portals, even at one point ending up in what looks to be Antarctica. There's ice and polar ice caps all around, and it's so cool jumping through these portals. So I hope that one day Insomniac does make a game for Doctor Strange. Like, they're making a Wolverine game that's supposed to come out, I don't know, 2025, 2026. It's still very much in the early phase, but super excited for that one. And I hope that they do make a Doctor Strange game. We got a little bit of a Wong cameo Spider-Man and Black Cat, they both open up a portal to Paris together where she can be with her girlfriend. And she makes it to the portal and leaves a baton with Miles, and Miles looks at it and it disappears. And you get a little post-it note from Wong. I thought that was so funny. But that's it. I love it that they leave you wanting more, just like they did in the first game. Next up, we have Miles meeting Peter and Harry and MJ up at, and Genki, of course, at Coney Island. It's really cool being at Coney Island. So much detail, so many lights. It's so immersive and so much fun, right? But also, it's really cool to see the dynamic between Miles and Peter. You know, of course, Miles is feeling a little insecure, it seems like. You know, I think maybe we've all felt that way when we had this friend or brother that we get along with so well, but as soon as their best friend shows up, you feel like you've just been pushed aside. And Miles is definitely feeling that. So much so that he doesn't want to be around it, and he asks Genki if they can just get out of here. And then you're left with the Three Musketeers. You know, you get left with Peter, Harry, and MJ having a great time together. You get to play these mini games, right? You get to play like this water gun squirting the target thing, and then you get to ride some of the rides. I didn't spend too much time on that, but it's so much cool how detailed they are. And if you're on the roller coaster and you have the camera positioned right behind Peter's head, you kind of feel like you're on the roller coaster too. You know, I got a little pit in my stomach during one of the drops. That was fun. But eventually you get to this point where you see Tombstone. He's working at this, like the go-karts. He's a mechanic. I thought that was really fun. It was really cool to see that these villains are people. And they're not just evil people. They can be reformed. They can be changed. And they can have a change of heart. I thought it was really humanizing. But after you ride the final ride, the chaos ensues. So last ride you get on is the Ferris wheel. You and MJ get on, and Harry leaves. Right, he doesn't want to crash their couple moment, and it's very cute. Right, you wait till you're on top of the Ferris wheel, and you guys kiss, and there's fireworks literally in the background, and then you look over the edge and you see Tombstone, who's being surrounded by hunters now. And even though he was a bad guy, it's your obligation to help. So Spider-Man just jumps in there and suits up, and he's fighting hunters now. And during the commotion, some more hunters show up in this Jeep, and they try and ram you, but you jump out of the way, and they hit the roller coaster, right? They hit one of the columns that holding up the roller coaster, and that's when the chaos ensues. Now you have two groups of people, two roller coaster carts, train things, on the roller coaster headed for this piece of broken track, right? And it's chaos. There's flames. There's people screaming. People help me. Tombstone's being taken away, right? And Peter's spread way too thin. He doesn't think that he's able to do this alone, right? He has one of the carts hanging over this giant flame, right? With one hand holding the web to that cart, and the other hand holding up the rest of the damn roller coaster track, ready to fall on him and the rest of the people. And just when you think that he's about to fail, Harry shows up with the symbiote holding up the ride so that Peter can help the rest of the people. And it was a predictable reveal, right? Miles had left at this point. You knew somebody was going to help. Spider-Man was going to die, but it was a really, really, really cool reveal, I thought. Right? And we know that these two characters can be at odds with each other, and we're waiting to see what it is that splits them apart. But next up, Peter is tracking Kraven again. He breaks into another base, right, where you infiltrate and you take out a bunch of the hunters and goons that are patrolling the empty hallways and warehouses. And just when you think you've cleared the room as Spider-Man, this dude with double ninja swords shows up, and before you get a chance to take him out, from the ceiling breaks through Agent Venom, which I thought was a really cool cameo. Agent Venom is when the symbiote takes over Flash Thompson, and he decides to be good and help Spider-Man. But you get the visual cameo of Agent Venom. He breaks in and quickly takes out the guy with the double swords. And it's a really cool moment to see this team up between Harry, his best friend, who now has powers, with teaming up with Spider-Man. And they work together to take out bad guys. It's like revisiting that dream come true I mentioned. And the dreams working together and improving the world. And now they can really, literally do that together on both sides of Peter's life. The scientist who wants to improve the world, of course. But you also have the other half of him, Spider-Man, he usually has to be alone in and doesn't get to share that with Harry. Now he can. So now it's another dream come true for him. And I thought that was really cool. How everything seems to be lining up for Peter now. You know, whereas usually he's the guy where Spider-Man is almost like a hindrance, really keeping him from being happy. Now it feels like everything's coming together. So you finish clearing out the hunters and the goons, and you find this warehouse where Tombstone's actually being held now. Now he's trapped in this makeshift cage underneath this furnace. And these bars are really, really strong. So strong that Spider-Man can't open and can't bend them, can't break them. And neither was a symbiote, actually. So the only way that he was able to get to him, and when I say he, I mean Harry. Harry was able to get to Tombstone by going into the furnace, where it's super, super hot, and breaking down into the cage. Right, so now he's on the other side of the bars with Tombstone. Now Harry and Tombstone are on the inside of this cage, and no one can break through these bars. They don't really know what to do because Tombstone can't go back through the furnace. He doesn't have a symbiote. But the place is falling apart, so there's a sense of urgency, and they got to figure this out quickly. Harry puts his hands on the bars, and you see he flashes back immediately to seeing his hands on the glass inside the green tube where he looks trapped, and obviously it triggers some sort of emotional response because the symbiote reacted so aggressively he's able to break through the bars. And then all hell breaks loose, right? You're able to break through the bars, you get Tombstone out, but now you got to escape the building, which is falling apart, and I mean falling apart rapidly. You have to run as fast as you can as Peter through the building and out. Running, swinging, and slingshotting through this tunnel. It's really, really cool, really fun sequence. I really enjoyed it, really loved it, and this kind of thing I love seeing from the Spider-Man games is the speed and the agility that you get as Spider-Man. And you get this really, really nice, heartfelt thank you from Tombstone. You know, as heartfelt as a big, tough mechanic can be.
Tell your friend thanks for looking out for me. See you around, Spider.
And it was a good moment for the two of them. He actually gives him a handshake and respects him, and he walks away. So now we're leading into a more exciting part of the story. They're looking for Connors. Curt Connors, the Lizard. In this game, he has already become the Lizard and already cured himself. He's no longer the Lizard. But we find out that Kraven and his hunters are looking to reactivate the Lizard. And while MJ reports to Peter that his house is crawling with hunters and Connors is nowhere to be found. But while she's in the back of their van hacking into one of their computers and getting some information like where their base is, the hunters start packing up and they close the door behind her. She drops her phone on the street while on the phone with Peter and they drive away. So her phone's back on the ground at Connors' house and she's taken in the back of a van to their base. Now she's able to, once they park at their base, which is an abandoned zoo apparently, she's able to bust out of the back door, knocking somebody over, grabbing a taser, and tasing the other guard. So she's safe at the moment, but she goes into the zoo. And as she travels through the zoo, you do one of those boring MJ missions in which you hide, and at least this time around you get to like take out some people with a taser. But it's another MJ boring mission. And at the end of it, you get to see Curt Connors being put into a cage, one of the cage for the animals, where MJ eventually sneaks her way into the cage, ready to help Curt Connors, but behind her we see walking up is Kraven. Kraven's able to toss her aside, and she's helplessly witnessing Kraven inject Connors with this green serum that turns him into the Lizard again. So Peter and Harry both make it to the abandoned zoo, and land on top of the cage where they see Curt Connors and MJ both trapped in this cage. Well, not actually trapped. They're able to get out. And Connors says that he has something in the atrium, like a lab, where he can try and make an antidote before he changes. So MJ has to help him walk over to the atrium, where the hope is that he can make an antidote before he changes. But they're surrounded by hunters, and so while they make their way to the atrium, you as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and Harry need to clear the way and take out any of the remaining hunters. Now, this is the base of operations, so there's tons of hunters, and you have your hands full, right? Protecting MJ and getting the hunters out of their way. And MJ and Connors actually make it to the atrium where he pulls out a vial. He finds a vial that he says he can use to make an antidote, but he drops it in the surrounding chaos. And who picks it up? Well, Kraven. He picks it up and puts it around his neck, wears it like a necklace, and then it's too late. Kraven now has a serum around his neck, where it's nice and safe. He pulls out a knife, and Kurt Connors starts to change into the Lizard now. He grows a tail, he has these weird eyes, and Kraven thinks now it's time to hunt. So like I said, he pulls out a knife. MJ runs at Kraven for some reason, and she gets pushed aside. And it looked like when she got pushed aside, she got cut. I saw like a splash of red. She falls on the ground, and Peter puts himself right between Kraven and Lizard. He tries to fight Kraven, and he throws one punch, and he's stunned. His eyes are widened when Kraven catches it, and it doesn't budge him at all. And then the even bigger surprise is that immediately after, Spider-Man gets a knife put in his stomach. And of course, MJ's scared. But who loses it is Harry and the symbiote. He lets out a burst of venom tendrils, taking out the rest of the hunters, and he goes after Kraven. So now that Harry and the symbiote are taking on Kraven, keeping him distracted, MJ gets over to Peter. And she starts to walk him through the atrium, putting his arm over her shoulder and helping him walk. As you walk through the falling debris and under trees and stuff, you see in the background Harry fighting Kraven, and you just see Harry wailing on Kraven. He's mad, he's pissed, his best friend is possibly dying. And Peter and MJ only make it so far. You hear Peter's voice start to fade, he's getting weaker. You know he's dying. And then you just see him fall over. His body gives up, and he's laying on the wet ground, cold. His eyes are closing, struggling to open. And MJ calls Harry over, and they kneel beside him. Of course, they're begging him to stay awake, but the guy just had a hunting knife into his stomach, and I don't think he's coming back. Peter definitely died here, or he would have. But Harry, screaming for his best friend to stay alive, the symbiote knew what he wanted, and he transferred the symbiote over to Peter. And the symbiote started to patch things up, and what seemed like a really, really bleak moment became really, really awesome when he wakes up and you see the Venom black suit Spider-Man that we all know and love. There's still so much left for us to get into. The new black suit, the new rage mode you get with the symbiote suit, Peter's new personality change that we see every single time that he's bonded with the symbiote. What happened to the Lizard? Where does Kraven's hunt take him next? Like, who's next on his hit list? Which characters are we going to see live or die? And of course, we have to talk about Carnage being in the game. And the Across the Spider-Verse cameo crossover situation we see once we accomplish the most tedious side missions. There's still so much left for us to dive into as Spider-Man fans. And considering how long this video is getting, we'll have to dive into that in the next video. So just to make sure you get everything, be sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you can see those videos. And if there's anything I missed, anything you thought I should have mentioned, feel free to comment down below. And if there's anything you want to see me break down next or talk about or get my opinions on, write that down there too. Alright, cool. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.